I wanted to welcome my very special guest, Daniel Peyton. So happy to have you here, Daniel. Thank you for coming here in person to the studio.
It's always fun to be in person.
It really is. I know Zoom is just not the same, you know, you don't get the same kind of feeling of that you're with a person, really with someone.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to read an introduction. Daniel Peyton is an award-winning best-selling author. He was born in Stillwater, Oklahoma, kind of flat, right?
Oh yeah.
And spent the first 18 years of his life dodging tornadoes. Oh my goodness. The next 18 years were spent in the shadows of the Great Smoky Mountains in East Tennessee. Recently, he has moved to the great state of Michigan. He began his creative life as a stage actor and performer with a hobby of writing. The hobby turned into a passion and then profession when he was published in 2008 and has since published multiple novels and short stories, some series, some standalone work, right?
Yep.
In late 2019, he became the lead writer of Heroes Rising. I love that name, an online game to which he contributes artwork as well. Writing through the pandemic, Daniel created the owl-headed wand that was picked up by Prince of Cats Publishing in 2022. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Every day is another opportunity to be creative and to spin new and fun stories as he continues building his name and profession. Welcome, Daniel.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad. I met Daniel at the Motor City Con about a month or two ago, and we had a nice discussion. And he had like a table full of beautiful books, each one unbelievably well illustrated. Let me see. This is a camera here, so let me see if I can go like, yeah. So let's turn it that. How would you like it to? How would you like to? We'll show it this way, right?
That's good. Yep. I love that cover. My
Yeah.
publisher sent me this cover, and because I had some ideas. I'm an artist, so I had some ideas of my own, and he said, "Hey, let me show you this." And I saw that, and I was like, "That's perfect. That is so
I'm
perfect."
so glad because it's just really it's because it compels you to pick up the book. You know it's really it's important to have an attractive cover because it kind of brings people in, you know, kind of to the experience. Look at these beautiful covers, unbelievable.
And that's my series, Legacy of Dragon Wand. That was my first published series by a professional publisher, Cosby Media Productions.
Wow.
Back started in 2016. It's still going today. In fact, book number 6 in the series came out in December.
Oh my goodness!
So
this is a really and it's popular because you have a following for it and
yes.
everything too,
Yes,
right?
whenever a new book comes out in that series, I have people all around the world that I know are going to contact me and say, "Can I get a signed copy?" Because they want it from me. So it's always
yeah, and
I
they
always know
and
that.
they've been waiting for you to write the next book, right? These
Oh, yes.
people. So it's like you kind of feel a tiny bit of pressure sometimes from your fans.
Kind of. I'll say this. One of the things I've always adhered to was when I write a book, a story, I write the story till it's finished.
Wow.
And when it's finished, then I go to publish it. When I say that, those 3 books, the Dragon Wand book 1, 2, and 3, which is a full story, it comes to the first 3 make up the first full story. I finished all 3 books before I even looked for a publisher.
Oh my goodness.
Because I don't want to be that author, not naming names, who doesn't finish their stories. And so I will write to the end, and that happens, and I love
so
it.
glad.
So that's book number 7 in the Dragon Wand series will wrap up the main story for Marcus, and that book is going to come out this year at some point.
Okay.
And it was written; it's been finished for a while now.
Wow. So
yeah.
you have to actually write the book, but the story, you know what's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
and all that. So perhaps when you're ready to launch that, if you'd like to come back, I'd be happy to have you.
Oh, I'd love to.
I love your artwork so much. I think it's amazing because like you're like multimedia, you know, like you're like this phenomenon that write and like, you know, and also create different genres. You know, working in acting, you could probably produce and direct. There's nothing you can't do. So it's great that you get to do what you love because you've made a life of it. I'm really happy for you.
Oh, thank you. I love doing it. It's a passion that I'm just applying.
Yeah, it's great though because you get to like create, you know, and sometimes in that creative process, you it kind of like it percolates and you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like this book, The Owl-Headed Wand, like you actually had the story in your mind, that opening, can you tell me about how that kind of developed into the story?
Oh yeah, the owl-headed wand. This one was different for me. Oftentimes, when I have a story idea, I have a story idea, a major character, a plot that's going to happen, and how that happens is going to come about when I write it. This one, I had this scene in my head, this idea in my head of a story. Originally, it was going to be a short story of some nature in which a young orphan who's a witch or wizard, who is burglarizing a Wandmaker shop. And as
Wow.
he is doing this, he's a young kid, he's scared, he's doing this out of desperation. He's not a criminal, he's desperate. And the Wandmaker catches him. But in the very bare bones of what our original idea was, Wandmaker catches him and sees in him this need and that he's just a child. And so instead of turning him in, he takes him in.
That's awesome.
That was what came, and it hit my head, and I loved it, and it stayed there for probably, I'd say, 3 years. I kept thinking about it, and like, could I use this? But then I was writing this and writing that and doing this, and I was like, I'll write it sometime. Well,
Right.
it came up. I started writing that one, and it just turned into the owl-headed wand.
So do you, like, in a sense, do you kind of have an idea where it's going to go? Or is, like, say with that book, did you start that scene and then did it lead you, or are you leading it?
Both.
Yes.
For a lot of writing, the story does take hold, and I know where I want the characters to go, and sometimes you have to pull out the bullwhip and make them go that direction because they don't want to. For this one, as the start of the story, I knew where I wanted it to start. I wanted him to be adopted in a way by this Wandmaker.
Yeah.
But that's not a story. That's a scene. And I tell people that all the time. People come to me and go, I've got a great idea for a book. And they tell me a scene. I'm like, that's not a story. That's a scene.
Right.
Where does it go? What's the point? And so I had this idea of where I wanted it to go. And surprisingly enough, and I'm not going to spoil the story too much here, surprisingly enough, it wasn't some big climactic battle. It wasn't some important note of the world he's in, and the whole point of the story was about him coming to forgive his past and grow. And how do I do that? How do I take the story and guide it that direction?
And have him come about that awakening and that kind of realization.
Yep.
It's really it's amazingly like vivid imagery, like the way that you write. You really draw a person right into that story, and you feel like you are that character, because he was afraid to fly, and he was afraid to, like he was just like, oh, I don't feel worthy of this Wandmaker, and oh my gosh, would you actually teach me how, like I totally related to that, because you know how we sort of feel a bit unworthy, and that character had this lovely, simple, very humble quality.
Yeah, I wanted to also, when I approached the character of James, I wanted him to not feel like he was on top of the game from the beginning. I wanted him to stumble.
Yeah.
And I wanted him to stumble like a kid stumbles, not comically, not silly.
No.
There's a wonderful show, if you've ever seen it, they do out of England called The Worst Witch. And that one is about a young girl who stumbles across a magical world, and but the thing is, she's the worst witch, so she's always making comically bad mistakes and all. But that's funny, it's fun, it's great, it's a great show. But I wanted it to feel like a kid, your average kid in school who's just struggling, who learns, who grows, but then struggles, but learns and grows. I wanted it to feel that way, and so I kept having to pull myself back at times. As I'm writing this character, I'm like, okay, no. He's getting too good here.
Yeah.
I don't want him to feel like the prodigy child.
Yeah.
And I started stripping out some of that and rewrite a scene where I'm like, okay, no, I want him to approach this as a real person.
Wow.
Hayao Miyazaki, who's famous for Studio Ghibli films like Spirited Away and all.
Right. Howl's Moving Castle, things like that.
He once said that he wanted his characters to feel as real as anybody you would meet. But the world is as fantastic as a great fantasy. And if you watch any of his stuff, you see that. That inspired me to think that way. Strip away the desire to make your hero the hero, and make him the hero you would be. Yeah,
because he isn't excellent and proficient at all these things and flying and all. Like, he's just like us, like this. He's hanging on, and he's like, oh my gosh, like this is kind of dizzying and crazy, and look at the height. Like, you completely feel like that's exactly how I would feel, but he gathers the strength that he needs, and and stands up, for the town. And I really like the character of the kind of like the official. What would you say? She was like a guard.
Yeah, the captain.
Captain.
She's
she's
head
a
of the
captain.
Wind Elf Guard, which are part of the Elf Guard of the land.
Right. That was really interesting because the elves had this huge mission with like protecting and very much being honored to protect the owl-headed wand, which people don't even speak about, right?
Hmm.
It's incredible. Did you watch Harry Potter kind of growing up a little bit, or was that?
I didn't grow up with it,
Yeah.
but I did watch Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I
'Cause
loved Harry Potter books, and the
me
movies were
too.
good. Yes.
I think they did a good job at making it feel magical,
Hmm.
and I really feel that from your work. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading Remnant. And is that in the category of fantasy? Is that sci-fi, or what category would you say Remnant is in?
Remnant is my most unusual book.
Okay.
It is Christian,
Yes.
but it's science fiction dystopian.
All in one.
All in one, all rolled together. As I say, it's my most. I get a lot of raised eyebrows when I say that. And I've had and to be clear, I've had a very brilliant cross section of people who have read and enjoyed that book. I mean,
Right.
enthusiastically enjoyed
Wow.
that book. Not just it's not just a Christian market or just a sci-fi market. I have all
Right.
kinds of people who have. It's been shocking to me. I didn't expect that, but
No.
it has. But for the uninformed, dystopian is the contrast of utopian. It is a working society, but there's something wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas utopian is a working society where everything's right with it.
Yes.
A good example I will give for that is, now I can think of it,
Kind of like Blade Runner or something like
kind
that?
of like Blade Runner,
Like-
Demolition Man.
Okay.
If anybody's seen the movie Demolition Man with Sandra Bullock and Sylvester Stallone,
Okay.
great movie. It's good, basic action-y Sylvester Stallone 90s
course.
sci-fi. But the world they set it in is actually written very well. I'm impressed with it from that era because a lot of that stuff was just cheese. This was actually pretty good. It's dystopian.
Wow.
The above world, where they live, everything's so perfect, but it's only perfect on the surface. So that's an example I give of dystopian, futuristic
Dystopian,
science
that's-
fiction.
Right.
And that's
right.
what I wrote this in, and it has a very strong feeling. There's sci-fi, and it feels like a Star Trek style sci-fi. It's not like Star Wars. Star Wars is more magical sci-fi. I call it that. It's a little
Okay.
more. Whereas this is very technical sci-fi.
Yeah, which is kind of Star Trek. Yeah,
Yeah.
like they want to get their details right. So when you're writing, you're also thinking of visually what these characters look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can literally like professionally draw like something that ends up on a cover like that.
Yep. In fact, a couple of my covers I have drawn.
Wow.
I have a picture that of Marcus. Marcus. Jeez, that's Dragon One. No, James. This is a picture I drew of James.
Wow.
I painted that as a promotional picture to show what the character looked like because a lot of people asking me that. However, I will say this: some characters are absolutely. I want them to look like this. If somebody were to draw me a picture or hire an actor to portray said character, I'd be like, they got to look like this. This is what they look like.
Right.
However, there are
Right.
some characters I kind of leave a touch ambiguous.
Very nice.
I do describe it, but if you think
Very
about it,
nice.
once you've read Owl-Headed Wand, you have in your head what he looks like.
Yeah.
And I can give you the clothes, I can give you the setting, but what he looks like is up to you. And I like that because I want people to kind of form a personal connection with the character
that's exactly
as you're
what
reading
happens.
it.
That's exactly
so
what
if this
happens.
were say produced as a TV special or movie or something, and they hired an actor to play James, and he was of African descent or
Yeah.
Latino, I would say, fine. Does he play the character? Does he portray the character
Right.
as written? Yes.
Right.
That's what he looks like.
Awesome. That's great. That's super that you're open-minded about it because you could be approached for some huge project like that. And it's just kind of nice that you're open-minded. That's
Mm-hmm.
really nice because directors love that, right? Producers, they love that. Can you tell me a little bit about the embroidery that you do? I find that fascinating.
Oh, yes. I have been part of the Embroiderers Guild of America since about 2001,
Wow.
but I've been stitching longer. When I was very young, before I was in school, I didn't crawl. I was a very animated kid. I would roll, I'd pull myself up and run. My brother did the same thing, and it's actually indicative of strong ADHD. We found that out. But because you don't crawl, when you crawl, your fingers are doing a lot of exploring.
Yes.
Moving, you're articulating them a lot more. When you don't do that, your brain and your hands don't learn the function well.
Oh.
And so when I got into
Wow.
school as a kindergartner,
Yep.
I couldn't tie my shoes. I couldn't hold a pencil or a pen very well. My fingers weren't working right, and they were so concerned. And my mom took me and my brother to our family doctor and was like, "What's going on? Is there something wrong with their head, their brain?" Yeah, a little. It still is. But what he looked at her and said, "Why don't you teach them to stitch?" My mom's been a stitcher for a long time, and so she gave us big plastic needles, yarn, and plastic canvas, and we started stitching. And
So
went
that
from
trains you to actually be coordinated and have executive functioning.
And so I went from unable to hold a pencil to now I'm a professional artist. But I fell in love with stitching. I loved how you completed playing with the colors, following patterns, making your own patterns. Even a kid, I loved it. And so it's amusing.
I'm really glad that
So-
your mom actually introduced you to that, because so many of us would not ever have a chance to learn how to do that.
I teach it now.
Right.
And part of the Embroiderers Guild function is to expand the knowledge of stitching. And so I teach
Wow.
various forms of embroidery. Bargello, I did a Bargello class. I taught a class on Swedish weaving, which is a type of needle weaving on
Wow.
surface. But I got this, and what I find amusing is I've been doing this for years, and I stitch. In fact, just this morning I've been working on a cross stitch piece just for the fun of it.
Awesome.
And
I love it.
It's so peaceful. It's so relaxing. There's no screen you're staring at. It's just
it's
stitching.
true.
And so I'm doing
It's
this, but
true.
I will go to teach. I will go to seminars and events where I'm teaching on antique forms of embroidery or something. I walk into the room with all these ladies who've been doing this for the past 10 years, ever since they retired. My grandmother taught me this. I walk in and they go, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I love seeing young people take up stitching." I'm like, "Yeah, who are you?" The teacher.
They must be so surprised.
Oh, yes.
That is absolutely the last thing they would expect. And I love that. You love it so much.
So-
From childhood. I just love that because, wow. And it's amazing because not everyone can do it. And I would say that you'd have to have a steady hand and unbelievable patience. But I'm also thinking, too, that you could be thinking about stories while does that happen?
Oh, it helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a book I'm pitching right now to publishers.
Okay, awesome.
That's called Threads of Magic. It's about stitching witches,
Wow.
witches who use embroidery for magic.
I've
So
never
I
heard
got
of
to
that.
tie the two together.
That's amazing. So yeah, that's great. Is it a standalone book right now?
Yes, right now it's standalone.
Right
but
now, 'cause
I do have notes for multiples, but I I have so many writing projects.
it's crazy. I think I saw, was it James Patterson? He has folders of ideas. And so he's got them organized that he's like, oh yeah, lake house mystery, whatever. He kind of knows where to go. So it's so cool that somebody who has, I don't know how many books he's published,
Yeah.
but you're the same way. You're collecting ideas, and then you're kind of seeing where it goes, because something could be a book, but something else could be part of a game that you're developing, right? So how did they find you to work on games? How did you meet the people that allow you to do that work? Because that's amazing too.
Well, that's kind of a funny thing. I've played online games just off and on over years.
Right.
Facebook games, back in the old click-based ones. And there was a couple hero games I enjoyed playing that were bought by a company, and then that company cut them all off as a tax dodge. And so everybody who played them were upset, and we're like, we like these games. And then about 9 years down the road, one of the developers who worked for the company redeveloped a game similar to it to give the players back what they lost.
Good.
And I found out about it, and I was just going to go into it and going, okay, I'd like to be part of this. But I realized they were still barely in the beta phase of testing it. And the guy doing it was doing it off his own dime.
Wow.
He had a few other games, but they, were smaller games, but he couldn't really afford to put all of his,
And he couldn't pay
eggs in that
somebody
basket.
to develop something like that.
So-
the way it should be, properly. Right?
Yeah, he was trying to kickstart this and that, and it was working. But how it started was not storytelling. How it started was I saw where he was going, and he showed some of the power cards that are part of the game, which were an integral part of the original game.
Okay.
The artwork was stick figures. And I was like,
must have been like, what?
why? And he goes, well, we can't afford much for the art right now. And I said, I kind of said, well, I have, at the time, I was doing a lot of learning on digital art and just studying art and doing figure drawing and stuff. And I was like, okay, I have a whole folder load of just art I've done just for the fun of it.
Wow.
And would you like to use some of this? I'll sell it to you real cheap. I know it's, I don't care. This is not my
Because you're sort
job.
of practicing.
And
Yeah.
so I said, and he was like, okay, sure, send it to me. And he'd been getting a lot of people being very generous, but they're not good.
But not very good work.
And I
yeah.
sent him my pieces, and he contacted me back a day later and goes, can we talk? And I was like,
He must have been shocked because he didn't expect that.
yeah,
right?
he was not expecting that. And so he bought the art from me, and then he
Wow.
said, would you like to be our lead artist? And I said, well, no, I don't have time for that. I'm an author. He's doing an author. Let's talk.
Yeah, let's talk
Here we
about
go
that
again.
too, because
And-
that's also very useful.
And apparently the guy who was writing the story for their game wrote out an outline and a story for the base part of the game,
Right.
but he wanted to go, these games want, progressive growing storylines and characters and everything.
Oh
This guy quit. He was like, I gave you stuff, but he got another job doing something else and totally like construction. So he just totally left. And the guys running this game said, we're in the beta phase. I'm hoping to launch it in a few months. I'm trying to get, can you help me out? And I was like, all right, I'll do this. We'll do it freelance, which means I'm working by the job, so that at any point, if I'm literally saying I cannot do this anymore,
Right.
it's not a big thing on you to say, oh, I got to take you out of the company. No.
Right.
So
right.
we,
yeah. Kind
we-
of simplifies things, but it lets you like start the ground running, like
Yeah.
start right away.
So I wrote out some stories for them, got started with it, and I've been doing it ever since, and it's such a blast.
So that's called Heroes Rising?
Heroes Rising.
Okay.
Yes.
And is there like a website or something like that?
Heroesrising.com. I mean,
Very
it's,
good. Very good. No, that's amazing. Because,
Yeah,
like,
just-
it's just nice to know. So, like, you're developing games with them as well.
Yes, I've
Yeah.
worked with them, and I started working with Mecha Galaxy, which is another one in their house that they wanted me to do some writing for. I have done some work with a fewer bigger named game developers to just do some like freelance here and there.
Right.
It's great. It's money.
Yes,
But
it's
I
nice.
mean, in 2020, we're all at home.
Yes.
I had every convention canceled. Go big, go figure. And I'm working on editing and producing books, but now I'm sitting twiddling my thumbs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I got this game, and we have 1 billion people online who need
Yes,
something
we
to do.
We
So
do. Yes.
we're
And they
no-
want something new.
And that year, every month, I wrote a 27,000 word short story in progression. So it was it was episodic
Wow.
progression of this main storyline that was broken up into small chapters that were released piece by piece, and they would have events involved and stuff in the game involved tied in.
Wow.
I wrote 300,000+ words that year just in Heroes Rising,
My goodness.
plus 2 books that year, Owl-Headed Wand, and a Star Trek book.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
in 2020, I put words on paper like nobody's
Like
business.
nobody, no, and did you know that you were capable of doing that much
No,
work?
I will say this:
Probably,
that getting this job, working with Heroes Rising, gave me an insight to what I could do. I broke past barriers in my own mind on
Right.
how I can create and how I can produce, and created and worked on it, and I've grown from it. So that's
Wow.
why now when I do conventions, I do events, and I go talking to people about writing. I go and I talk to new authors or amateurs who are not even got their first word down, and they want to know what to do. Part of what I always say is just write.
Yeah.
Because so many of them are like, well, how do you do this? Or when do you do that? Well, I need to do this and figure out that. And I'm like, no, just write. That's what I figured out myself. I figured out I didn't have time between each of those months to sit back and go, okay, I need to fiddle about this and worry about that and fudge on this and think about that. No, I had something to write tomorrow. And so I just did, and I did, and I did.
I
Now,
think that's the secret.
and the thing is, does that mean everything I wrote was great? No. Does that mean that I will always produce fantastic material? No.
Not every
It just
single
means
time,
that
but-
I will produce. And that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing, is that a lot of people don't produce.
Right. And you have to have something to edit,
Yes.
to work on, to develop. Like if you have nothing done, then you can't go any further and you can't do anything with what you have. So it's discipline, isn't it?
Discipline.
Did you really? You must have really nailed down discipline for yourself that
Well,
year.
and I learned it before. I already knew it, and I learned it before because of being an embroiderer. I can sit there, and we would go to little festivals and stuff to promote EGA,
Right.
and when they'd ask me to come along and sit and stitch with the other ladies, so that I could show people it's not just little old ladies sitting and
Yeah, it
stitching;
could
it's
be
all kinds of
anyone.
people.
Yeah, right.
And so I'd sit there, and I had people stop by and go, "Oh, that's so lovely. I don't have the talent for that." And I always said the same thing. It has nothing to do with talent.
Wow.
It's all about practice
Okay.
and patience. Now, talent for writing, for stitching, all that, yes, there is a modicum of that natural instinct for it that I see. My mother's sister, going back in the family, we have artists, painters.
Wow.
So yes, there is something there. However, that's only, I would wager, 2 to 3% of what you need.
My
The
God.
rest of it is going to be practice, 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 and persistence.
Wow.
And that's it.
Patience. So you said patience too, right?
Patience
That's
is
really
important.
important.
Yeah, for especially artwork, patience is important, but also just persistence. Keep it going. Even when you feel like you're not going in the right direction, if
Right.
you're writing, you're going in the right direction.
That's true.
You
Yeah,
know?
it's true. I really believe done is better than perfect,
Yes.
right? Just to kind of get something done. And it's a good feeling because then you kind of know that you can actually, oh, yeah, I did that yesterday. Maybe I'll do something else today. And then, it becomes a book over time. You said that you also have played D&D, Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I have the bit of irony in my life is I've only played it recently. I did not get into Dungeons and Dragons until about 21,
That's incredible.
2021, not my 21, 2021.
Yeah.
I wanted to for a long time, but wherever I was, people I knew who played it, and anybody who plays D&D understands this. The groups were small, and they didn't have room for another person.
Yeah,
I was
right.
consistently held back by that. And to be fair, where I lived in Tennessee was a beautiful, beautiful place, but the town's population was very lopsided to either being retiree or under 18. You didn't have
Not
a
a
lot of
lot
people
of-
my age,
yeah.
and so you had to travel an hour or more outside of town to find a bigger town that actually might have gamers. So I spent a lot of years not wanting to, but not being able to do it.
Right, right.
But when I say what I call irony is the fact that I during that time I wrote and published fantasy books, and I had people come to me and go, "Oh, we love Dragon One. We turned this into a whole campaign."
Like a campaign.
And I
yeah.
was like, "Oh, how?" Because I had no idea. I didn't do that. I didn't write it to be a campaign.
That's such a compliment.
Yeah, now I understand
Wow.
how much of a compliment
yes.
it is now that I
And-
play. Yeah.
And it is sort of, what's the word? Transferable.
Mm-hmm.
Ideas can be transferable. That's amazing. I know, like, if people are interested, I think it'd be really fun to do a series of D&D games. We did 2 so far, and we'll probably have to do another one maybe by Zoom or something. But it's really nice to do it in person. So I can call you up when we're putting a game together, and because you're not that far away from studio, and we can talk about, actually, because the fun thing is you could actually come up with ideas for campaigns and characters and things like that. So that's great. That's really great. So you're planning on probably going to some conventions in 2024 coming up.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm planning on it. Now there's always that coin toss of whether they come to fruition, but I'm planning on doing Motor City, which Motor City of course has 2 during the year. They have one
didn't know
they have
that.
one in the spring and they have one in the fall.
I did not know that.
There's Fanboy in Knoxville, Tennessee, which
Okay.
it's been a constant for me because I lived there. Fanboy in Tennessee is a beautiful one. I recommend that one anytime.
Awesome.
I'm usually at Connecticut in Hartford, Connecticut. It's a beautiful con, big Comic-Con, wonderful.
That's amazing.
Lots, and they really like their authors, so I love them.
That's wonderful.
I'm
so
hoping to get into Pensacon in Pensacola, Florida. That's again that one's kind of in the air, and I'd love to do Dragon Con, but that one is an invite. I don't know if I've got it yet.
Yes.
So right now I'm
Wow.
at that kind of hovering stage of will I, won't I on if I get them. I would, if I could do it, I would do them every weekend, but
Yeah.
then I would have no brain left. I would be so tired.
I know, and it's great that you have so many books and everything like that to share, because I think that what makes you stand out, like for me at Motor City, I felt like you were such a serious author just because of the sheer like amount of work. Like you're just surrounded by work, and it's like, wow, this is all yours. Like it's really impressive. Do you have a slide that you want to talk about here? I want to make sure so that this next slide here.
Ah, yes.
Oh, look at
That's
that.
my owl-headed wand slide. I want to point out, just because I have a moment here, if you notice
Yeah,
the owl in the
please.
corner here that's kind of a steampunk owl, the owl-headed wand has a very light flavoring of steampunk to it.
Wow.
It was intentional. It's not a steampunk book. I will not call it that because it's definitely not steampunk, but it's got a light flavor to it. There's airships. There's a steampunk feel
That's
to it that
true.
I wanted to throw in there.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I love how it's set, and then like in the kind of the forest and everything behind it. It's kind of part of the story is was it the elves that really take care of the forest? Like they're very
The summer
stewards.
pixies and the owls.
Yeah,
Yep.
like they're literally stewards, right? And then this next slide.
This one is that's my book Remnant, and
My goodness.
that is. I'd love to show off the fact the book won several major awards very quickly, and
Unbelievable.
it's been highly rated. And Remnant is a standalone, and that one will always be a standalone.
I'm very much looking forward to reading it as well. That's wonderful. And this is James from the Owl-Headed Wand that you painted this yourself. It's extraordinary. Honestly, I'm just so glad that you have so many talents, because it's almost like, what'll I do today? It's always a good thing. Like, let me paint, or let me, develop a game, or it's
I've actually
really,
had training in voice work too.
Have you?
If I get to do this, I'm wanting to do a radio style production of the Owl-Headed Wand. But you'd be surprised which character I want to play.
Oh my gosh.
I want to play Merlin.
Okay, I think it'd be a great Merlin,
Because
actually.
I can play Merlin.
I think
Most people don't
I
know.
think he'd be a great. Oh, it's true. Wouldn't it be fun?
Mm-hmm.
And he gets to be sort of concealed for so much of the book, but that whenever if he's going to come into the situation, it's going to be like a cataclysmic something or other that he's responding to. It's not just going to be any old day that he shows up, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's incredible. It's so funny. I forgot to play my theme at the beginning. It's so funny because how you just want everything to go well, and I'm so glad that you felt comfortable and that it's really easy to talk with you. So I'm so glad, so happy that you could come here today and sit and talk with me. And yeah, I'd like to invite you when you have your next work, or if you want to bring some embroidery to show. That would be lovely. And so maybe you could contact me, and then we can plan the next day if that's all right with you.
Sure.
That's super. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm so glad that I met you. Thank you for going to the Motor City Con and bringing your work, and for being so generous with teaching about this. I mean, honestly, if you ever wanted to do a little kind of a half-hour sort of class on how I write, I think that would be really wonderful if you were willing to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
That would be great, because I think you've taught before. You've taught writing many times, I think.
Yeah, I've been
to all ages. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a whole seminar in Ohio just a while back to all these kids who were there from the schools that were winners of a writing competition.
Oh, they must have been like
and
your
they wanted-
rapt audience.
Actually, my there was how to write, but also how to publish. My seminar was how to get published, and that was whew.
That's incredible.
That
So
was
they must
interesting.
have been hanging on every word.
Well, I invited a publisher to actually co-speak with me, so
Wow.
that
Really?
that was pretty good.
That's really good, and it's so kind of you to be so generous with your talent. So yeah, please come back and bring your work, and we can launch something, whatever you'd like. And so yeah, thank you for watching. It's been such a pleasure speaking with Daniel. Thank you for watching and learning with me. And we're gonna actually do some more learning, because I really think that it's important that people who are born to do this work, if they can kind of pass the torch a little bit and help others light the way, because I think that, people have a story in them, and it's really great that you've been able to tell yours so beautifully.
I will say this, right? Being an author is a marathon, not a race.
Yeah.
We're not competition. We're all trying to get to the end, and we will help each other get
Oh,
there.
that's so true.